Every time you open a news app, you're sold a friction-free vision of the near future. The story goes that by 2030, we'll unplug the coal plants, roll out the solar panels, and seamlessly reboot the global economy on renewable power. But that narrative ignores the sheer physical mass of the system keeping 8 billion people alive right now. Our current energy grid is a sprawling, deeply entrenched labyrinth of steel, concrete, and pressurized pipelines. The scientist Vaclav Smil points out a hard truth about this infrastructure. Replacing it is nothing like downloading a software update for your phone. Swapping our primary energy source requires a total reorganization of human society from the ground up. Designing a climate future based on optimistic projections requires us to first reconcile those goals with the hard limits of material science and historical pacing. To understand why this system is so difficult to change, we have to look at what energy actually is. As the Nobel-winning chemist Wilhelm Ostwald argued in his energetic imperative, energy is the single universal currency. You cannot turn a thought into an action, or a settlement into an empire, without spending it. This chart maps out the energy yields of different eras in human history. We start with the low output of prehistoric foraging, move to a slight increase during agrarian societies relying on muscle and wood, and then hit this massive spike when humans began exploiting highly concentrated fossil fuels. Every major leap in human complexity tracks perfectly with the transition toward more concentrated and versatile forms of energy. Nature is acting as our civilization's banker. For the last 2 centuries, we have been living lavishly by burning through millions of years of stored solar capital. And now, that debt is coming due. Tapping into those dense fossil fuels physically rewired human behavior. The shift to coal and oil required new ways of organizing labor, giving us fixed working hours, modern contract law, and the physical infrastructure for globalized trade. It also introduced a concept Smil calls power density. Because coal and oil pack so many calories into such a small volume, they allowed us to stop spreading out across farmland and start clustering together. Millions of people could be packed vertically into dense megacities, sustained entirely by a steady pipeline of distant energy. But extracting that concentrated power required grueling physical labor in extreme, hazardous environments far beneath the Earth's surface. Writing in 1937, George Orwell noted that our civilization is founded on coal more completely than one realizes until one stops to think about it. The machines that kept his world running, and the ones keeping ours running today, depend entirely on that dark, subterranean extraction. Because these fuels dictate where we live, how we work, and what we consume, moving away from them means actively dismantling the physical routines and social structures of our current way of life. That physical concentration of energy also created a massive concentration of political power. The scale of fossil fuel extraction naturally funneled global wealth and decision-making authority into the hands of a very small group. Smil refers to the beneficiaries of this system as macro-parasites. These are the cartels, lobbies, and special interest groups that secure heavy government subsidies and manipulate policies specifically to protect their trillion-dollar assets. Historical evidence repeatedly shows geopolitical cartels artificially controlling the tap. Organizations like OPEC have the capacity to dictate the global economy simply by adjusting their output quotas, slowing down or speeding up the flow of our primary energy source. This extreme centralization leaves modern society highly fragile. A single supply chain disruption or sudden shortage can instantly paralyze a nation, turning daily commutes into endless lines for rationed fuel. A multi-trillion-dollar economic inertia acts as a massive physical anchor for the current system, actively resisting the shifts required to build a new energy era. We often assume that because we burn the most energy, we represent the absolute peak of human cultural achievement, but history tells a very different story. Consider the energy baseline of classical antiquity. The profound architectural engineering of the Parthenon and the foundational philosophy of ancient Greece were accomplished using only minimal animate energy, human muscle, wood, and wind. Contrast that with modern sprawl. Today, we consume 10 times more energy per capita than those ancient societies, yet a massive portion of that power output is burned idling in gridlocked traffic or maintaining inefficient infrastructure. Consuming massive amounts of power does not guarantee a more moral or enlightened society. In many cases, it simply amplifies social isolation and inequality, creating a system that runs faster but often forgets where it is going. When you review past long-term energy forecasts, you find a staggering failure rate. Decades of predictions promising an imminent clean energy future have fallen flat, which should make us highly skeptical of today's politically driven decarbonization timelines. Generating 1 gigawatt with coal takes a small footprint. Because wind and solar are diffuse, capturing that gigawatt requires exponentially more land. Building this infrastructure means mining millions of tons of steel, concrete, and copper, using massively carbon-heavy processes. Passing green legislation is an important political step, but a law written on paper cannot overrule the strict, unforgiving laws of thermodynamics and material science. The Realist's mandate is clear. Global decarbonization is absolutely necessary to preserve the biosphere, but the technology we have deployed today is simply not powerful enough to get us to zero emissions on its own. Technologists like Bill Gates emphasize that avoiding catastrophe requires massive leaps in fundamental R&D funding, a scale of investment far beyond what we currently spend. And even with new technology, innovation alone won't close the gap. The hardest truth of the energy transition is that affluent societies must adapt to lower energy availability and actively reduce their daily consumption habits. A sustainable future will not arrive magically overnight. It has to be built slowly, painstakingly, and realistically, with a full, clear understanding of the massive physical weight of the civilization we are trying to move.